Let's start with the root. Performance in spiritual spaces is not new. It is as old as humanity. It began in the same place all performance began, survival. In every culture across time, ritual leaders, priests, healers, and shamans held positions of power. And where there is power, there is temptation. Sometimes the temptation was to please the crowd, to keep status, to attract followers, to maintain influence. Sometimes the temptation was to mask one's own uncertainty with spectacle. Even in the oldest temples, there were prophets who performed instead of embodying. There were priests who loved pageantry more than presence. There were devotees who wanted to be seen as holy rather than actually be transformed. Colonization and forced conversion amplified this wound. Our ancestors' rituals, embodied, communal, rooted in land and rhythm, were outlawed, demonized, or commodified. Where there was once the drum, they imposed silence. Where there was once the circle, they built pews in rigid rows. Where there was once the earth as the altar, they replaced it with gilded pulpits. Where there was once call and response between humans and spirit, they demanded submission to one voice from a stage. Indigenous practices were painted as dark, savage, pagan. Those words were weaponized to fracture trust in our own inheritance. Whole cosmologies were recast as demonic, not because they lacked holiness, but because they gave people direct access to holiness without needing colonial intermediaries. At the same time, colonizers built their own pageantry, grand cathedrals, stained glass, choreographed ceremonies, aesthetics designed to awe but not necessarily transform. The focus shifted from covenant with spirit to performance for spectatorship, from alignment with Ori to allegiance to an institution, from intimacy with source, true intimacy, to obedience to hierarchy. And so a dangerous inversion occurred. The oppressed were severed from their living covenant, shamed into silence, forced to hide their rituals in shadow. The oppressor elevated costume as covenant, spectacle as spirituality, ritual as choreography rather than transformation. And over generations, this distortion seeped into the marrow of our consciousness. We began to mistrust the earth-based ways of our ancestors while aspiring to the grandeur of the colonizer stage. Even in our return to tradition, we sometimes unconsciously replicate this, measuring holiness by aesthetics, volume, or performance, rather than the quiet fruit of character and covenant.